Most of us who are suffering aren't suffering because of this moment. Even if something really, really challenging is happening in your life, usually the suffering is caused by how long is this going to go on for? What's going to happen when this gets worse? What's going to happen when this happens to me? Usually it's continuously a projection into the future. In not trusting life, we're basically saying the future is not going to be okay. Now think about how old you are. I'm 34, and I've probably had thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of worries about sometime in the future I'm not going to be okay. But throughout that entire thread of all of those worries that I'm not going to be okay, if I actually felt into the moment, I've always been okay. The tragic future which I've been thinking is going to come has never come. Now, if I even think about some of the worst things that have happened, in the moment of them happening, again, I was okay. For instance, I was in a car crash. We went head on into another car. The car crumbled around my body, spun through a hedge, the doors came off, smoke coming out, blood coming out of my mouth, and I find myself lying by the side of the road. And in that moment, I felt complete joy, complete peace. I was laughing my head off. Now that might sound like a weird response, but I don't know why it happened. Maybe the body released the natural endorphins. Maybe I was pulled so into the present moment in the seconds before the crash that my mind disappeared and I entered into some bliss state. But one of the most extreme incidents that happened, and I was completely okay. So another difficult thing that we all go through is break up in a relationship, your partner leaving you. So if I look back, we all don't want that to happen. We think, I'm not going to be okay if this happens. But if I look back to when that happened, yes, there was pain. Yes, there may have been suffering. But what was the suffering? Usually, again, it's a projection into the future. I'm not going to have the life that I thought I was going to have. I'm not going to have the life that I wanted. Yet in that moment, even though there's pain present, I was okay. So right now, in this moment, I've had 34 years and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of worries about the future. And yet, thousands and thousands and thousands of worries, all with the idea that at some point in the future, I'm not going to be okay. And yet, right now, here, having been through all sorts of crazy shit, I'm okay. Is it plausible to think that there isn't a loving intelligence guiding our lives? Now, of course, when we think about when this question's posed, the first objection that would come into people's minds is, but what about all the people who are going through awful, tragic things? And of course, I can't speak for their experience. I can only stay with my experience. So if I was to have that thought, yeah, but what about all of the people who are going through really, really tragic things? Then I don't know whether that is true, because that's not my experience. All I can look at is my own experience. And this isn't to say that people aren't going through awful things. Of course they are, but I do not know their experience. All I know is my experience. And my experience is that I've always been okay. Even if tragic things have happened. Even if difficult things have happened. Usually, the suffering that is present in this moment is a projection of the mind into the future. In this moment, I'm always okay. There's a phenomena of people who are on death row. So a high percentage of people who are on death row, in the days before they're about to be killed, they enter into a deep, deep state of peace and acceptance. Now, why does that happen? How could somebody who is about to be killed enter into a deep state of peace and acceptance? Well, because that mind pattern, which is projecting into the future, becomes so painful and so intense that it cannot hold on anymore, and it drops away. And in that, the thought of them being, all the thoughts of them not existing drop away, and they're completely in the moment. And even though they're guaranteed 100% going to be killed in a few days, they don't live there, they're not there. In that moment, they are okay. I used to love watching this TV series called Banged Up Abroad. I think in the States it was called Locked Up Abroad. It's a really cool series. I've always been interested in suffering, and I was really afraid of suffering when I was in my 20s. I had this fear of like the worst things that could happen to me. I was like, what if this happened to me? The worst thing you can think of. What if that happened to me? Would I cope? So, Banged Up Abroad, there was this guy who was kidnapped by, I think it was Somali pirates, and he was held in these really brutal conditions, and obviously he's trapped in a prison cell and horrible conditions, and his mind is thinking, fuck, how long am I going to be here? When am I going to get out? Most of the suffering isn't about him being there in the present moment. Most of the suffering is about how long, when, where, what's happened to my life. Am I going to... It's all a projection of the mind. And what would have been the worst thing that he could have thought of in that moment? Well, what if the people who were kidnapping him did something really, really horrible to him? Hurt him physically. Anyway, one scene comes in the program. They bring him into this room, and they put his hands on this table like this. I can't remember what happened. Maybe he tried to escape or something, and one of the people guarding him gets this knife. They grab it and they put the knife through his hand, right through his hand into the table. In that moment, when they put the knife through his hand into the table, he said he entered into this state of immense bliss and spiritual union. Completely, his all his fantasies about life disappeared. Every thought about his life disappeared. The future and the past gone. When the future and the past are gone, he's fully present in the experience. And in that experience, bliss, ecstasy, deep union with God. I was reading a book called Out of the Darkness, and one person in the book, he was in a motorbike accident and he got paralysed from the neck down. For the first year, he was in so much suffering. He was in intense pain and he was in a lot of psychological suffering. He ran out of money, so he couldn't stay in the hospital in the States anymore. The only thing that he could afford was a state-run nursing home filled with crazy old people. And he said for the first year, it was hell. They were screaming, they were shouting, and all he could do was stare at the ceiling. He couldn't move a muscle. He was completely paralysed. All he could do was stare at the ceiling in intense physical pain. For the first year, his mind was completely projecting into the future. When am I going to get out of this? I'm not going to be okay. I'm not going to be okay. I'm not going to be okay. The suffering is in, I'm not going to be okay. One day, the nurse wheels him into the shower to wash him. And a voice came into his head. Let go. Stop resisting. And in that moment of hearing that voice, let go, stop resisting, he felt his whole identity holding on really tight like this. And in that moment of hearing that voice, let go, stop resisting, something inside of him let go. The entire resistance to his experience completely let go. And in that, he came out of the fantasy of, in the future, I'm not going to be okay. And he came completely into the present moment. His resistance to life disappeared, and he entered into immense bliss. He said he felt this channel of light pouring through his body, and his ego completely dissolved, his resistance completely dissolved, and he started exploring intuitively, naturally, these inner realms of bliss. And he's still in the same position. He's got a tiny bit of movement back in his arms, in his legs. He still can't move his head. He's looking up at the ceiling. But he couldn't be any happier. He completely in enjoyment of every single part of life, completely in bliss. Why? Because he gave up the resistance. Gave up the story, or the story of, in the future, I'm not going to be okay, fell away. What if the belief that in the future I'm not going to be okay is simply a belief? What if it's not true? What if you're always going to be okay? And I'll ask you, I don't know, you might say something different. I'm not saying this is the case. I'm literally just posing the question. Because I don't know myself, I'm posing these questions to myself as I'm talking. Has there been a moment in your life where you haven't been okay? Which didn't involve a projection of the mind into the future. If your mind wasn't projecting into the future, has there ever been a moment where you weren't okay? Now, this guy who was paralysed in the motorbike accident had excruciating physical pain. And as soon as he let go of the idea of, I'm not going to be okay in the future, the pain didn't go away. It stayed as a sensation in his experience. But he actually stopped taking the painkillers that they were offering. The morphine drip that the doctors were wanting to give him, he stopped it because there was no need. Because without that story, he was completely in a realm of bliss. And he said that was the best remedy for pain that he ever could have had.